Big signings off track, steady improvements on it, and even a few wins here and there. Ferrari's revolution in the Fred Vasseur era has been quite the ride so far. Okay, F1's most famous team hasn't quite transformed into the Red Bull beating behemoth we've all been waiting for, but it looks like it might genuinely be on that path. There's a super team in waiting vibe about Ferrari at the moment, as Lewis Hamilton prepares to join in 2025 and Adrian Newey continues to be linked with a blockbuster move. With some other less glamorous but very significant arrivals coming this year as well, Fred's Ferrari really is starting to take shape. So how convincing are its long-term prospects, and is it doing enough in the short term? Let's start with the here and now. Ferrari had an air of frustration after viewing Imola as a missed opportunity when its upgraded F1 car finished third best behind Red Bull and McLaren. The much hyped first major Ferrari upgrade of 2024 was never expected to be the game changer some outside the team made it out to be ahead of its first home race of the season. But as Ferrari had started the year on balance as Red Bull's nearest competitor and even won a race, there was obvious optimism that it would edge it closer to its main rival. A third successive defeat to McLaren then, let alone failing to beat Red Bull, is a clear disappointment. But it was actually what consigned Ferrari to third rather than the result itself that irritated some of its key figures after the race. Charles Leclerc was not thrilled, having pressured Lando Norris for a while before eventually finishing a fairly lonely third, 7 seconds or so adrift of the top two, Max Verstappen and Norris. Leclerc admitted after qualifying 4th fastest that the result was a little worse than expected after a bright start to the weekend, and after the race, Leclerc felt that qualifying performance cost the team a potential victory. Imola is not necessarily the best layout for the Ferrari engine given its turbo arrangement provides good power delivery off corners but is perhaps left lacking at the very top end. Leclerc was also adamant though that Ferrari was missing something with its engine strategy at Imola compared to McLaren and Red Bull. He felt that its battery deployment was slightly off as he lost time on the start-finish straight beginning his qualifying laps that he couldn't make up. Maybe that was a hint at a need to better compensate the engine's characteristics on a track like this. What does seem more certain is that this was a continuation of Ferrari missing a little on Saturday, then looking stronger on Sunday. The SF24 still looks a little less potent than Red Bull and McLaren over one lap, and it seems likely that any of the top 3 cars would have had a good chance of winning had they held track position. With the margins as fine as they seem to be in certain races, that relative weakness in qualifying could be the difference between Ferrari sniping for some wins this season and struggling to even be second best. So that's Ferrari's current position. What's it doing to improve in the future? Well, for starters, let's praise Ferrari for the progress it has made under Vasseur's leadership as a technical organisation. It's proven itself more effective with developments over the last 12 months or so than it did in the first year of these rules in 2022, when it started brightly and then just went a bit meh. Vasseur's been keen to stress the contribution and quality of the existing technical ranks, but clearly they need adding to, otherwise Ferrari wouldn't be on a relentless recruitment drive. The first big recruitment question around Ferrari at the moment is if or when it will be signing outgoing Red Bull design legend Newey. But whether that happens or not, don't underestimate the push that is already yielding some high profile acquisitions. Loic Serra and Jerome D'Ambrosio start at Ferrari in October in a significant double swoop from Mercedes. Serra was the performance director there, while D'Ambrosio had a slightly more nebulous role as Toto Wolff's de facto right-hand man and head of the young driver programme. At Ferrari, D'Ambrosio will be the official number 2 as Vasseur's deputy and driver academy boss. There's been a vacuum in support of Vasseur for the last few months since Laurent Mekies left to be RB team principal. Meanwhile, Serra moves into a very significant technical role. Not the top job, but he'll report into Enrico Cardile as head of chassis performance engineering. His remit includes track engineering, aero development and vehicle performance, a core responsibility range and more overtly linked to team performance than D'Ambrosio's. Both of these appointments confirm something that has been known in the paddock for several months now, but that doesn't make them any less significant. In Serra, Ferrari gets hold of a highly respected figure from Mercedes who is well thought of by Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari's star signing for 2025. But we shouldn't take that to mean Hamilton's arrival somehow influenced Serra. Ferrari was first linked with the ex-Mercedes performance director almost a year ago, so this has been a long time coming. And if anything was a factor, it would be Serra's impending move that nudged Hamilton further towards doing the same. These should be powerful additions to Vasseur's Ferrari. He's done a good job so far in motivating the wider workforce and getting more out of the existing staff, as well as inevitably overseeing some rank and file recruitment that we won't have heard about. But this is further evidence of Serra shaping the top, public and very important parts of the team as he wants them to be. One of the reasons we might characterise this era of Ferrari as a gradual revolution is that things are changing more fundamentally than just gently advancing what was already there. Serra's not the type to rush things, but he has been willing to make big decisions and isn't afraid of key changes when he thinks they are necessary. That was apparent very early on in his tenure when he shuffled the pack slightly on the strategy side, moving head of strategy Iñaki Rueda off the pit wall and out of a trackside role entirely, having Ravin Jain take charge strategically trackside and having fewer people on the pit wall and in the garage. Bringing in new people is easy as a team boss, moving on the existing personnel is harder. And the Imola weekend was Leclerc's first with a new race engineer, following a rare in-season change in a high-profile position. Ferrari announced ahead of Imola that Leclerc's long-time race engineer Xavi Marcos, who has been the voice in Leclerc's ear for his entire Ferrari career, would be replaced by Brian Bozzi. What Serra and Leclerc said about the reasons for this left a lot of people still guessing what the exact motivation for the change was, why it was considered necessary, and what conversations had preceded it. Leclerc said the decision was communicated to him right after Miami, and unless we're vastly underestimating Leclerc's station, it is unlikely he was a key instigator. Ferrari just stresses the change has been made for organisational reasons, and in the context of communication issues in the past. An inevitable conclusion is that Bozzi is seen as an upgrade in terms of the information flow between Ferrari and its driver. It can never be perfect, but Ferrari has caused problems for its own drivers on several occasions by failing to feed in the right information at the right time. Serra has been preaching better communication since he joined and was willing to be patient for progress to be made on that front, but maybe he finally felt that the existing arrangement had hit a ceiling. And the fact Ferrari made the change at all, especially the timing of it, says a lot about Serra's Ferrari. He looks to improve the processes rather than blame individuals for errors, but if there are better people for certain positions, he will act. So whatever the true reason for this specific change and what it's exactly aimed at achieving, it's just a very good example of a Serra mantra in action. If you don't keep improving in F1, you're dead. Ferrari's race engineer change is something more likely to yield immediate gains, and Leclerc seemed happy with how that started at Imola. But the bigger priority to improve its immediate prospects is car development. Serra has effectively called on Ferrari to speed up in the development race given how close things are at the front. There's a big emphasis on upgrades making the difference now, with Red Bull refining its class-leading car and McLaren yet again proving prolific at adding a big chunk of performance in season. Red Bull will probably still have easier, more commanding weekends on tracks that don't play to its car's weaknesses like Imola did. But Ferrari's and McLaren's respective developments have at least made the lead fight close enough that it can be influenced by team execution, weekend circumstances, track characteristics, and the different strengths and weaknesses of each package. Serra says we will have to speed up the development in reaction to that, because that could jump a team from third best to winning if they can get something on the car one weekend before rivals. He described it as a matter of hundredths of a second, not just finding tenths, but obviously the crucial bit is that upgrades aren't rushed, they actually work when they are put on the car. We mentioned earlier that Ferrari's development has been more effective over the last year, and Serra was happy with gains he saw in 2023 in terms of parts production. But in terms of prolific idea generation and the efficiency of its tools and processes, is Ferrari able to maximise the budget cap and the development restrictions like its rivals can? Back in 2022, pre-Serra, the answer seemed to be no. Ferrari appeared to have a bit of a dry spell in terms of ideas and physical upgrades. It wasn't able to do as much as its rivals within the cost cap, or do it as well. It's something for Ferrari to prove it can do this season. Serra's indicated it will be 2 or 3 races before another upgrade arrives, suggesting that Ferrari's chances until then will come down to getting the setup right and exploiting the maximum of what it already has. How big or effective future upgrades will be, we can't say, but at the moment Ferrari looks like it has hauled itself closer to being on level terms with the likes of Red Bull and McLaren rather than out-developing them. It may be that Ferrari needs more people contributing more good ideas to feed the throughput of new parts and get that to a level that results in prolific gains across multiple in-season upgrades. Maybe in the long term, that's why it's important Ferrari will be bringing in more new people, whether they are in top positions, bolstering the aero ranks, or, we don't know, end up being some kind of part-time super consultant sprinkling gold dust over the 2026 car. That could be the kind of missing detail that turns a race winner into a championship winner.